that at this stage, these are all a plan that's worked out to a point, but the model, the images, the renderings, they're all just really rough and conceptual. Once the bond passes this year at town meeting, we will then go into the effort of really honing the design and the details and what the building will actually look like and the colors and all the materials. So we don't, what we're showing is just a could be. The plan, we know we've got agreement on, the floor plan of the building, so those things are worked out. And if you have questions, please just ask away and we'll try to deal with it. So back in 2005, they looked with a different outfit, they looked at this building and how a renovation could be done and how an addition could be achieved. So it's been a few years. In 2013, they then looked at doing a new standalone building out behind this existing library, but that had some issues as well. Back in 2014, they interviewed and asked a number of architects from around the state, and we competed and were awarded the project to look at a new standalone building across the street on its own site. And this was one of the options for doing a new facility over there. That was found to be a little too costly, and it did not pass at town meeting, as most of you know, so we then went back to that's another rendering and the pretty pictures of that building in 2015. So then the idea of, let's go back to this building right here. Look at doing an addition to it and renovating this space. So in 2017, last year, we were asked to come in and do some conceptual modeling to determine how this building could be best utilized to meet the needs, fit the program in the space allowable, looking at the site, how the parking could work within the wetlands. And so last year in the summertime, we came up with 5 options. We started with option 1, which was based on Skip's idea of kind of making a square, keeping one point to have line of sight throughout all the areas. And then we came up with 5 other options. The trustees decided and selected option 5, which is, this is the existing library here, so build a simple form, an easy addition off the end of this building, renovating this room that we're in, excuse me, and then utilizing the existing building as best we can. That was the floor plan that we talked about. Staff weighed in with comments, how to adjust it, what they felt needed to be done for their collection. We tweaked and tweaked and tweaked and ended up with a project that is 5,180 square feet of new addition, and then 3,927 feet of renovation of this library right here. Here is the schematic plan to date. We basically took that last rendering and developed it a little bit further, brought it into CAD and needed to provide Andre with a package of drawings that he could then put a conceptual budget towards. And so this shows there are things here that will likely not occur. We know we're going to end up having stacks around the perimeter as well, but this just basically shows the collection and arrangement that will fit with a little area for future growth of the library's collection. A much larger meeting room, program room. It has space off the side for storage, and there's a little kitchenette thing here. There's bathrooms. There's a small meeting room. Kind of the collection back of house, working on books. That's the reception desk. Then the entry will remain right here. We'll we'll modify the exterior, make it a little bit larger so you know that that's like the way in. So you'll come in through, here's the reception desk, you can go either direction.
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
Does the meeting space have a separate entrance?
There is a separate entrance right here, so you can come off the parking into here in the
So
evenings.
So that room can be used in the evenings when the library's closed?
Yep, there's a control point right there
Okay.
to allow for shutting down the library.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Thank you.
good question. Any other questions about how the layout of the plan works? It's been kind of kicking around for a while, but it's nice to have the chance to ask now.
Yeah, Anthony, you could also point out that that smaller meeting room is equally accessible for evening use.
This one here.
Yeah.
Yep, good point.
That's actually going to be the New Hampshire History Room.
Okay. What else? So, one of the things that Andre did was we outlined right here some alternates that could be done with regards to renovating the existing facility, like replacing the windows and doing some repair work on doors and swapping out all the existing light fixtures for high efficiency LED lights. And since we're working on things, reconfiguring items, new flooring, so all of those, it was a pricing exercise of what a number of options would be. We didn't know exactly where we would come in with the total project cost, but the trustees and staff chose some of those alternates to be able to renovate this area to kind of bring it up to the same level that this new addition will be, so that when you're here, it's new, you're not going through an area and this is still old and worn and not up to the same quality level of the new addition. So they accepted those alternates and they're currently in the total project budget as we are talking about today. So all new windows, new flooring, new lighting. And most importantly, over this area will be more insulation in the attic. So on the top cord of the trusses will be an R60 blown-in cellulose insulation, and that'll be consistent along the whole building.
Question?
Yep.
Oh, go ahead.
It looks like you're like doubling your books capacity.
No, we're not.
What is it the same? Is it
We'll
third
probably
more?
have a few new stacks, yes, so we don't have to shelve books that are 7 feet high and maybe on the bottom. We have changed all our stacks out there because of space to build them up really high. So what we will do is, get them a little lower and spread stuff out some. And yes, there will be some new stacks too. But no, we're not going to double the size of the collection.
Is it a third more or?
I don't.
It was a third more in the last plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm guessing it's
it wouldn't be more than that, I don't think so, maybe less. What we really need is space for people, not so much for stacks, but for people.
Right.
That's what we're looking for.
I mean, the population is declining in town. The student population is way down from its peak. And
I don't know, last year there was a whole kindergarten class born, we just bought the newborn books from the friends for them. There's
I'm just going by the numbers that I see that are reported in the school district
There's
statistics.
also several dozen homeschool kids, and I think there are about 60 kids under 5. So, it's,
So there's a boom in the brand
Coming
new
in.
ones.
yeah, we got a couple of babies in story hour and a couple of pregnant moms. So it's not stopping.
What's the capacity of the large meeting room
Um,
as laid out?
I think it's 82, something like that. 80.
80, yeah. 80 to 82. There are a few seats out to maintain egress paths, but
Thank you.
About twice the size of this.
Twice the size.
sir,
The rendition shows solar panels. Is that something that's included in the cost?
not currently. We intentionally are not pricing that out until we know that it passes, and the cost of solar panels is always changing down, fortunately. So we have a general sense because Andre's priced it a little bit, but it's not currently in the price of the construction renovation project.
Can I just say something about that? We've also been speaking with Revision Energy, which works with nonprofits and municipalities to find investors who will pay all the upfront costs for installation, and because they get the tax break, and then we would still get the break on the cost of the energy.
On some of it.
And Revision Energy is the outfit that worked with the town of Durham when we did their new library. We fitted up and have provisions for a new array, and once the project was completed, they came in and installed the array, not only on the library, but on a number of municipal buildings in town. So it was one big package deal, so.
I have a question. Is solar's going different formats? I mean, is this a typical big glass panel, or they got new technology or something, or you're not aware of what's being offered?
There are new technologies, but that's not our area of expertise.
I
So,
don't know what they're
yeah.
looking at.
Okay.
No, questions?
Oh, there's more. Okay.
Yeah, I assume the school has a library. And is there some redundancy between the free library and the school library?
Not really. The school library is specifically to support their curriculum. We, they have a lot of social studies books and books about countries and stuff that we don't have. We're mostly a popular fiction collection for the kids. And of course, the kids can't use the school library on weekends or vacations or during the summer. They're also allowed to take only one book out at a time at the school library, so there aren't those kinds of constraints here. What?
I've heard mostly a media center.
Yeah, it is. There are a lot of computers in their library, in their media center. So no, we don't do a lot of duplication. In fact, they borrow a lot of fiction from us for kids.
So I wanted to just zoom in on certain areas because the main plan was large. I didn't know if it would be too tiny for everybody to see. So here's the existing library, which would be renovated, and then the next is more of an enlarged of the new addition of the facility. So you have, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just sort of swinging back a little bit when you had the various options. You did mention that this does not impact the wetlands.
Correct. We'll get to that too.
Okay. Thank you.
The current front entrance will be closed, is that correct?
The current front entrance it can be open. It can be closed. We haven't decided exactly what is going to happen there. So, I think there's some money that's been set aside for that, but.
Do you need egress outside in
Might
that
be an
section?
emergency egress.
Emergency
point.
exit, yeah, in
Right.
that part of the building? I
Right,
would
so it'd
think
be a
so.
crash bar, so you just go out it.
Right.
Yeah, you
right,
wouldn't
right.
come in it, you just.
You go out, it'd just be emergency.
What we don't want is to confuse people about
Right.
where the entrance is,
Right.
which is why, this becomes more of a focal point, and because it's a control access point. And then we'll have an egress out here, obviously that one. There's another door right here to get out and around. So we have the required distances and multiple means to get out. So the advantages of this particular project layout is the access to the uplands. It has far more parking than what we had with some of those other options. The structure is really simple, being just a gabled building working as an addition, and it doesn't really affect this existing structure all that much, except for this wall. So, and it's easy to phase. We're able to build a new building, move into there, and then focus on this side so that we have minimum impact on the library staff and you know. The disadvantages are there's more perimeter and the distance of the control point, but I think we've dealt with that with the modifications that we have had. So we did a simple building section and a wall section to show the different pieces and parts and components. Again, this went to Andre to be able to put a good budget together. Having done this a number of times with your community, I know that there are a lot of folks in town that are detail oriented, so I thought it would be helpful to show these, just to be able to talk to if there's questions. That is the R60 blown in cellulose insulation on the bottom cord. So it will create a very nice energy efficient envelope of the new addition. The trusses will be cold and unfinished area. Clear span open. There may be something in structural in the middle in one spot, but we'll determine that as we go. The wall section itself is where all the good stuff happens. It's a traditional wall system. It's a wood frame building, so we'll have 2x6 studs. The envelope will be insulated with, on the exterior, there'll be 1-inch rigid insulation with the cement board siding. On the inside, there'll be a layer of spray foam that is an air barrier. It also provides some significant insulation, and then the rest of the cavity will be made up of a batt insulation. So the wall assembly is calculated at about an R34 wall assembly, which is greater than the energy code requires, and then R60 in the ceiling, like I've mentioned in the past. So the envelope will be very tight and efficient, which will allow the mechanical systems to be lowered. So just some details, that's all. So, yeah.
Was consideration given to like a vaulted ceiling to be open?
There are areas where we may be able to do that, but it then gets to be a cost issue. I think there may be an opportunity from this main entry in for a little bit of a vaulted space, but I think we can't determine that until we get into the details of it.
I have a question. Can that open space up above eventually or at some point be converted for more space for storage for, no?
No,
It's
not.
absolutely dead space. Okay.
Yeah, and we want to maintain that insulation. We want to cap the ceiling.
I understand, but
Yep.
it was just a question.
Yep. Okay. So we talked about the site. So there was a survey that was done. The survey outlined the areas of wetlands. The wetland scientist performed an analysis, and he provided a hand sketch with some areas. And there was, and we have copies of them here if you wish to see. There was some confusion between the two versions, the survey and the wetlands drawings. And when we did an overlay, they didn't align. So a lot of the concerns that the community had previously about not being able to utilize the space was because of that data. So we worked right around the areas that are known to be damp, and then we've got retention pond locations for the civil engineer to utilize, because we know that it's going to sheet drain and we need to be able to manage that water on site. We haven't had our civil engineer begin any analysis yet because we're still in the conceptual stage. If it passes, when it passes, then we'll get North Branch here to look at things deeper. But right now, we are able to maintain entry in, add some additional parking, and work within the areas between the known wetlands.
You mentioned the data and the confusion and so forth. I mean, have the wetlands been definitively established as where they are?
Yes, they are.
So you're confident of that, it's not going to end up under the parking lot?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was the confusion because what was provided to the library from the wetlands scientist had this area here right there. So it was not allowing for the same kind of access and use of the space.
So what was it? I'm still confused as to how the confusion arose. Did they re-establish? Did they resurvey?
This is the original hand-drawn. You'll see that the library is not in the right place. And this wetland is also not in the right place, but that's why we thought it could never be done.
I see. Okay, great, thank you.
Anyone else want to look at this?
Pass it around.
Okay. So, a few of images out of the model that was rendered. A couple are here. I just took some snaps around the building. As I said earlier, the colors haven't been determined. You know, if changes need to be made, we still have plenty of time. This entry tower area can be modified slightly. There's a nice area for the solar array with the appropriate solar orientation. So this is when I'm going to shift conversation over to the construction costs and let Andre do a little talk about what the delivery method is planned to be with this project. Yep.
Before you do that, my understanding is the new portion will be radiant heat, correct? On the floor? Is that what we were thinking?
I don't think we've determined that yet.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wondered if you were going to do anything. Okay,
It's something we're definitely looking into
okay.
as an option. One of the issues with radiant heat is it poses challenges with trying to anchor book stacks. Because if you put a bolt into the piping, it's a nightmare.
Big problem. Okay. Let's not.
It's radiant heat in this room and in the whole new addition is all radiant heat out there in the children's section.
In the children's section?
Yeah.
Correct. We've had this conversation. We know it, but we haven't determined it as of yet. You want to talk about?
Sure.
We have a question.
Shoot.
I'm looking at the wetlands plan and I see a 2006 certified sketch showing the library location, the pond, the limits of the wetland. This new one is a topographic worksheet where they've taken the 2006 one and blown it up and put it on top. I don't see any certifications that either one, other than the first one, is accurate. So I think it is possible that you might run into problems out there. Because all they've done is blown up the first one on a different base map.
The second map comes from White Mountain Survey, Sue.
Yeah, I see that. Is it certifying that this is the limits of the wetland?
Apparently.
No, it isn't. It's a topographic worksheet where they've taken Greg's work blown it up, superimposed it over the new locations. They used a more accurate method, apparently, to locate the buildings than what Greg had used to locate his limits of wetland.
So this was,
Okay,
this was,
neither one is, I mean, this one is not certified. So it's possible that it could be wrong.
There are a lot of people in this room actually who have been out there and had a look, and
They're not certified soil scientists. It's not what it looks like to the untrained eye.
from our understanding, the wetland scientist that was used did not provide detailed renderings of exactly the location of it. When the survey was done, they showed the areas on the survey, the digital ones, and when the overlay was done, it was clear that it wasn't to scale. It said it wasn't to scale, but the concerns that were voiced previously was that the major wetland was located a completely different area in the side yard. So we went with the survey and utilized the areas that were delineated on his survey.
I know, I can see exactly
Yeah.
what was done, and I'm just saying, this new one is not certified, that it's accurate for where the wetlands actually are in relation to the property. It's just a blow-up of Greg's original work superimposed on a new base map, and that's open to question.
Was the first one that was done some time back, is that an actual certified map done by an engineer?
It's a certified map done by the soil scientist.
What's a soil scientist versus an engineer?
Soil scientist is trained to identify soil types and soil properties, and they generally use a compass and tape type of location when they're locating their own work. Which
So
looks
it's an
like
argument between a scientist and an engineer, is that?
no. They did not have a surveyor go out and locate Greg's marks. Looks like Greg located them himself using a compass and tape rather than an accurate theodolite survey, which this base map that White Mountain apparently has done would be more like a theodolite survey, and they've taken a compass survey and overlaid it. So a compass, you can be off a foot every 10, 15, 20 feet. A theodolite survey, you're off, a 1,000th of a foot in 100 feet. There's a big difference. And it's the same with your bearings and your angles. They're more accurate with the theodolite than they are with the compass.
So
And this would have a certification on it if it had been done, at the same time with the same methods.
I mentioned the civil engineer who will be working with us on this project when it passes, and they have a wetlands scientist who works for them in their office. They will utilize the survey that was provided, and they will also flag the areas, and we'll have a clearer, more accurate, stamped and certified plan.
Right.
Once we move to the next
So
level.
this is subject to change.
Hopefully not.
Well,
Yeah,
Hopefully not,
Hopefully
because
not,
I
but
just want to say something
it
as a
is.
member of the community here, and I've lived here a long time, and yes, I use the library and love it. But we have spent so much money on surveys and plot plans and architectural drawings. We could have built a whole new library for what we spent already. I mean, it's time for this community, and I don't mean to sound like a Debbie Downer. We're either going to have to step up to the plate and build this addition, or figure out how we're going to renovate this building so we can live in it for another 6 to 7 years. And what's the difference in the cost between trying to put this older building in shape to really stand up, or go forward?
We can't wash our hands here.
No, we can't wash our hands.
Well, that's the septic system.
Yeah, so
That's
what's the
part
new
of it.
cost for a septic system? You have to upgrade, you gotta upgrade the septic. Now you gotta build a second one for, I mean, you guys are penny wise and pound foolish here sometimes.
Sue, may I ask, what would it take to certify? I mean, what, would you ask White Mountain to do a certified, I mean, your experience, what step would it take to get what you,
Comfortable with?
yeah. What should be done? I don't know, you know, but I.
Well, the engineers will do that when they do
This,
the,
this
correct.
plan here should have a soil certification on it. That this is where the soil's boundaries are.
But it came from them. So that's why we felt as though there was some confusion between what the civil plan outlined, the survey outlined, and that their overlay. So I think we worked with the best information that we had, knowing that our team has a wetland scientist and we will get there if the project goes to the next step.
Well, I know, but I think it's been misleading because it's been repeatedly said that it was redone and, you know, there were errors made on the first one.
I thought it was redone. You
This
had it
is,
come
this
twice,
is the
did you not?
same, this stuff here blown up and pasted on a different plan. That's all it is.
Maybe we need just a letter from White Mountain.
Right. I
That's
was
a
just going to
separate
ask, can we just go back to
contract.
White Mountain Survey and raise the question that she has raised? And say there's somebody, the way your challenge is what the information you gave us, and they will have a response from it, I would think.
So I would go to the trustees who engaged with them to begin with. Yes, sir.
The long and the short of it is, as you go through your construction period and your planning period, is that when you get your engineers involved, you're obviously not going to build a building that's going to invade wetlands. I mean,
Right.
that's impossible.
Correct.
So what's the big question is that if you get to that situation, you should be assured that it's not an obvious problem.
Correct.
But when you get into that kind of a situation where you're making test borings and all the other things, that's when you make your field decisions in terms of what you're going to do.
Correct. Because all of these
It has
are
nothing to do with the
schematic.
approval of a concept.
If the parking needs to be adjusted out away from an area more, then that's what will happen.
So you're saying you're gonna have a soil scientist go out again and do it?
Absolutely, yes.
Really? Good. You should.
And North Point Engineering from Concord, their team member has them on staff, and they intend to do that. Okay.
Theoretically speaking, going with Bob Deb's saying, you know, you come across the wetland, it's not where you expected, you have to put the parking somewhere else, you need to move the building 90 degrees or whatever.
It's not going to be that much, but
just theoretically, you have to adjust.
Adjust, yeah.
And theoretically, the price tag on the whole thing changes. Now, theoretically, it could even go down possibly, but if it goes up, well, it might.
You can't.
Yeah.
You can't, you're only authorized to borrow so much.
Okay, so
Right.
We
So-
know the financial.
so then if the building doesn't, the project doesn't get done, is that?
No, project,
Somewhere else. Sounds like we have a copy.
project sometime might have minor modifications, but it's not going to not get done.
But it won't go above whatever,
You can't.
you know, might be approved.
You can't.
So it could be a totally different,
No, I don't believe it's gonna be
Building.
totally different at all. But the fact of the matter is that when the warrant article is successful, it comes in $1,920,000, and that is the amount of money that can be expended. You can't expend more.
And so
Short of having another town meeting, and we're not gonna get to that point, so.
the first thing will be to have North Point here to do a true assessment of the site, wetlands and other, not just that, but other items. Have a geotechnical engineer come to do borings where the addition's going to go to determine what the subsoil conditions are, what the bearing capacity is, and all of that with the revised site plans will direct the design team of where we can go and what we will need to do to work within the site and within the budget, because we have a goal of 1.92 and that's it. So if the building has to get a little tweak here and there, if we end up not doing some work in the addition, the existing side and renovation, we may, there's going to have to be some give and take, and that's why having a construction manager on the team at this stage and through design is so essential, because they have their finger on the pulse of the cost of construction, can make recommendations to the design team, and we work together as a group with the library trustees and staff to kind of make those decisions to get everything you need and come in on the price. So first things first, getting the site determined completely, where the wetlands are, and what the geotech says the subgrade has.
follow up. So just in the hypothetical situation where you talked about where you're making some changes, so you might not be able to do the renovations to the old existing building or upgrade or whatever, in order to keep in that price tag.
Yep.
Are we just gonna, a couple of years later, this is not really a question for you, I guess for the trustees, a couple of years later, you're gonna come to a town meeting and say, well, we could only spend this much on the the addition, so we weren't able to do the old part, so now we need another however much to renovate the old building, 2 years down the road. But in the long term, that's one price, to do the entire building. So that would make it not 1.92, it would make it 2 something.
The renovations that we're talking about in the old portion of the building are not that dramatic, first of all. That's not where a lot of the money.
Well, they could be anything, though.
Well, we could put a hot tub in the middle of the building, but we're not going to do that. So with the fact that perhaps we'll deal with the vestibule, the front vestibule, the front entrance, and the manner that perhaps we were thinking about. But we are comfortable with our numbers.
That's true of any building project though, Max. I mean, they can start doing borings and find out the ground isn't suitable for supporting a building. Any project this is true of.
Isn't that why you
Well, I
have
think we were
contingency?
told for years that no addition was possible.
That's what we believe.
So maybe that is true.
No, I don't believe so. And that, and as Bob was going to allude to the fact, that's why we have contingency fees built into projects. And we have contingency fees built into our numbers here for just the unforeseen things that happen. But we don't have a crystal ball. Nobody has a crystal ball when it comes to construction. You never know until you have to start getting into it. You plan accordingly. And that's what we're trying to do with this project.
And in a couple of years, if you need to do the renovations to the existing building, those are not going to be
They're included in this.
large numbers.
I don't have a crystal ball to tell you what's going to happen in a couple of 5 or 10
So
years.
you can't commit to the town that you're not going to spend another $1 million.
I can't commit to anything. The town has to commit to us. Think about what you're saying. We don't have the power to spend money. The town approves to the legislative body what can be spent.
You won't commit that you're not going to ask for another $1 million.
It's a moot point. You're asking me a question that cannot be answered.
Would you
How can
you
we answer that
explain
question?
what a project takes and how you move through a project with
that-
field
This
changes?
is my segue right here.
Maybe you'll understand.
There's not a
I'm chomping at the bit.
There's not a commercial project that doesn't get built without some field changes and some contingency demand. I mean, nobody has, as Gordon says, nobody has a crystal ball. This is an estimate, and it's the best estimate that professionals have come up with, and to come and throw different scenarios of what could happen and when nobody knows, I mean, that's ridiculous.
All right, well, let's just take it.
I think I understand the design process that you've been going through, and you've got this wetlands area that has been roughed out by White Mountain Survey, and you feel reasonably confident that you're, let's say, within 95% of the envelope that's going to be available to you. But my basic question is, wouldn't it be more efficient at this point to go back to White Mountain Survey and get their work certified, and then at that point turn it over to your in-house engineers, rather than going now to the in-house engineers and having them come out and resurvey the wetlands area?
Can I just answer his question? These people have to have their own engineers and survey people come because they can't build their building until they do that.
Well, I think that if I
And
understand...
I would add to that what has been provided from a local wetland scientist is not the level of detail that we would expect.
Well, apparently it's an uncertified drawing, so it's not intended to be as complete as it should be. And what I'm saying is, wouldn't it be more efficient at this point?
Have our own crew do it?
No.
Oh.
Wouldn't it be more efficient at this point to at least get the White Mountain Survey Company to certify the results that they've presented to you thus far as working papers?
I thought we talked about contacting them to...
Oh, is that what you're going to do?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
That was working still
I
off
misunderstood.
that.
I thought
okay.
you were going to recommission the whole thing again to a new company down in Concord.
No, I'm just saying that North Point has them on staff. They plan to do this. So we're going to check it, even though it's been certified. But what we need are actual computer plans.
Sure.
Not hand drawings, because that's the only way that we are able to work within the margin of error that we need to be able to place the building. So.
All right. I didn't hear that, so I'm
okay.
sorry. I apologize.
All right. Andre.
No more questions?
I'm going to grab a seat now.
So, some very good questions, and hopefully I can kind of alleviate some of the things you're thinking about. At this point, this is the specifications and these are the plans that we're starting with. When these folks are done, the specifications get about this thick and the plans get equally large. So the way construction management works is that you go out and get some competitive proposals from construction managers, you select one, you bring them on board at this same way you do an architect. And we work under the owner, with the architect, to develop a budget. It starts with a very small set of plans and specifications, and we continually update the budget as the project progresses. So one of the big keys is, if the project gets approved, then we really jump in with both feet to refine numbers. At the end of the process, every part of this project is competitively bid, so that lumber, all the subcontractors, all we do is provide supervision, so every part of that, just like the Tufton Borough fire station, was competitively bid. So the town ultimately gets value of competitive bidding. the thing about construction management is it's a completely open book contract. So if the library says, geez, we forgot we wanted to add another light in this room, I go to subcontractors, please price this. I bring the price back, show them their quotes, and they say, yep, that's good. Where does that money come from? We have a contingency line item, because as perfect as these guys try to be, you can't think of everything. And when you dig holes in the ground, sometimes there's things you didn't anticipate.
Yep.
The contingency is created for the purpose of, we found somebody's old Ford Model T in the ground, we're gonna have to take that out and put some extra soil in there.
I'm sorry, I hate to belabor the point, but I'm new at this, and listening to the questions and the concerns, I don't understand how we got here without understanding the wetlands. I mean, this is wonderful to understand the process and to see the renditions, but it's the cart is before the horse. We need to understand what you can build.
I think that we have a fairly high relative confidence of what we have here, and work
But
has
you
been.
think we don't have the certification or the data, and I'm just sitting here struggling with, I appreciate you taking us through the process, but this might be a waste of everybody's time.
I don't think that anyone from the trustees or from our organizations would try to waste the time of the town or the finances of town if we felt that there's no, other than extreme embarrassment by saying, oh geez, it doesn't fit. Why would we do that? We have studied these plans and we feel quite confident that an error was made at some point and that we have the ability to fit this. And as Anthony said, maybe one parking spot is going to go here instead of there, to fit around where they are, but that's not a major cost to do that. It's probably no cost. It's
And
just
it's
a matter
not
of
a project killer either. It's just, at the stage that we're in, with what we've been asked to do, we have confidence in the plans and what we know what we can do. We just need to get the rest of the team on board to actually have it certified and have it designed right out. And we are comfortable with things, and it's just that's the process. We plan, we're comfortable, and only until we get the rest of the team can we confirm everything.
I think some people in town are just confused because for about a decade, is my understanding, because I moved here in the middle of that decade, the town was told that it was a project killer.
We were told.
Area.
We were told it was a project.
Well, you
killer.
told the town.
Well, that's what
The
we
people who
wanted
were,
to believe for 10 years
people
ago.
who wanted to build across the street conveyed, I'm sure, honestly in their own belief, but that was the reason to build across the street. And maybe, across the street was a better option. But for many years, can't build here because of the wetlands.
What?
The building across the street failed, so now all of a sudden, the wetlands are not an issue. That's confusing. So
we work around the information that we had. When we were brought on, the idea was to build a new building on the other side. We never even looked at this lot, studied this lot, or confirmed the information that the town had been provided years prior. We weren't focused on this particular site. Not until this year, last year, when we started looking closely at it, was it clear that there was a confusion between the overlay and what the site survey showed. And then it seemed, from our perspective, that there is enough space to do the project here on this site. Knowing that some adjustments may need to be taken into consideration with the parking, or a slight adjustment to the building's placement, just like we're talking 2 feet one way or 1 foot the other way. So small adjustments that will be shaken out during the design time. So, sorry for interrupting, it's just.
You didn't interrupt.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're trying to, resolve the longstanding needs of the community and the library and utilize the space that you have and being frugal and Yankee in that manner by working off the building you have and working within the bounds. And everything that was told prior is kind of like, that's outside of our area. We're just focused on this right now.
I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could I just say one thing, having been on the building advisory committee, and we all looked at that original wetland issue. In our report, it says the wetlands are an issue. Since that time, though, Max, it's come to the Board of Trustees' attention that maybe what everybody was looking at was not correct. Somebody made a mistake a long time ago, it appears. So now we are able to revisit this. I was one of them saying, what do you mean? We did all this research, now we don't have a wetland issue. So I get where you're coming from, but it does appear there was a mistake made a very long time ago.
Aren't you glad it was discovered and we can save some money?
Yeah.
Andre, for the record, what Carla said, I was involved in the verbiage for people who like the project across the street. There was no effort to mislead, ever.
Never.
It was the best information that we have, and it's been going on for years.
Well,
No
nevertheless,
misleading.
The reason for that building was the wetlands, as I understand it.
It's one reason.
It certainly was a factor.
One of many.
Yeah,
And now it's not.
correct.
That's confusing.
It's right now it's about saving some money too. Skip brought a new plan to the trustees, and they did their new due diligence and thought, okay, how can we save the town some money? That was another thing. I thought, wow, we have this beautiful plan for across the street. But this isn't about anybody being tied to one idea. This is about providing for a need that the town has without breaking the bank. We're saving the town a considerable amount of money.
Not really, because that building doesn't exist. So we're not comparing to that building. We're not saving money on that building.
If you were going to build across the street, it would cost you a lot more than what you're doing here.
Right, but we didn't build across the street.
No,
We're not
we
going
didn't.
to.
But we were going to go with that plan again another time. Go back to the voters with that plan. And then this came about. So it is about what's best for the town.
Sir?
To cut through the conjecture, what's wrong with the letter being submitted by White Mountain indicating their view of the work that they've already done so far in terms of the risk of their calculations being disruptive and not being able to build this project? What's wrong with that coming in? I guess I'm missing this. We're making an issue out of things that don't exist at this point. And it's all part when we get into the actual construction, when you do your test borings and all the other necessary things for your site development, is when you take your minuscule and you look at the site. That comes later on in the project. You've got your contingencies. Obviously, no construction is going to take place if the state comes back and tells you you're in the wetlands and you can't do it. That can't happen.
It can happen. The state isn't going to automatically come out and look at this. It's only
They
gonna
will
come-
if you ask them.
Well, who's going to ask them? Really?
Why wouldn't we in the process of building? Why wouldn't you involve the state if there's some question about your
Because it
wetlands?
costs more money. You need to get White Mountain Survey to certify this plan, that this shows accurately the limits of the wetlands. That's
Simple.
what I'm-
It's so simple.
What's the
They
matter
should be
with-
able to do
What's the
that.
matter with the letter?
We'll be on the phone Monday morning. We've established we're gonna do that.
Right, so,
Okay,
okay.
so
Can we move on?
So can we, yeah, it's a non-issue, you know.
It is a big issue,
It's a non-issue.
because you want this to be accurate.
Absolutely.
Greg Howard is an excellent soil scientist, White Mountain Survey is an excellent survey company. I don't think either one of them, makes
But we're not gonna solve
mistakes
that
like
here
that.
today.
No, we're
And-
not.
And so why can't we move on?
We
and
can,
hear
but you need to
Andre?
get it certified.
Well, it would be done.
Okay.
Pay for it, Gary.
I'd like to tell you I remember where I was. Kind of don't. So what we've done in the early part of the process is look at the addition, and again, it's a preliminary drawing. We try to work closely with the architects and the customer to ask questions about what do you want. We're working with some local people who have expressed a willingness to make significant donations, in this case, in one case, windows. Not sure exactly what how that's gonna impact, but, the cost of the project, but this is all part of the process. And as we move forward, the design reflects on, these potential contributions. We look at what we can afford within the budget. The budget is given to us by the customer, and they say, listen, this is what the select board feels the town will support. Here's where we have to work from. And so that's how we will go, and when a contract gets signed, we guarantee that the cost of the project will not exceed the amount that the voters approve. And we talked about the contingency that's in as part of the project. If none of the contingency gets used, that goes entirely back to the voters. So at the end of the project, on Tuftonboro Fire Station, there was money returned from that budget at the end of the project because the contingency wasn't used in its entirety.
I think it's also important to mention that Andre has his own contingency, so his own line item for the construction portion. And then on the other side of the line, we have an owner's contingency that provide, there's going to be some furniture and some fixtures and chairs and things that they have money aside for, but they also have a contingency to go into the project. So there's two contingencies that are in there that make up the total amount of the request of 1.92. So if either of those are not utilized completely, they'll go back.
Well, as plans get developed, we continue to price things, on a budgetary basis, so that as we approach, having the final bid documents, we already have a very high level of comfort as far as what the project's going to be. So things like, the two-story entry tower, maybe it's in, maybe it's out. That's one of those things that we look at and say, geez, we had some other surprises when we did soil testing or whatever. Maybe that can't happen. But we don't go out and cut parts of the project out. It's just we try to make them, as affordable and efficient as possible. And again, it's a very open book process. We work with the customer at all times and the architect. So we're trying always to get the best value for the dollar for the town. That's our job. That's what our reputation is based on. Our company's been fortunate enough to build 6 libraries in New Hampshire. We're working on 3 more. So we have a pretty good idea of what costs are involved in doing a library and how to control them and things like that. So that's our job. We're supposed to be looking out for the taxpayers of Tuftonboro and for our customer at all times. And if you're unhappy with something we're doing, feel free to call me. Yes, sir.
For anybody who doesn't know, I'm Guy Pike. I've been involved in construction of one kind or another pretty much most of my life. Industrial buildings, residential buildings, power plants, name it. At town meeting, a very small handful of people are going to be burdening the taxpayers with any number of debt items. This lady mentioned pound-wise and penny foolish, or penny foolish and pound-wise, however you want to look at it. There's a bunch of people that only look at the number and what you get for that number. And I want to apologize to the library trustees that they have to go through this, because truly dollar and value-wise, the building across the street represents a much better value than this addition and renovation does. So I'm sorry, trustees, that small group of people can't look past their noses and see what they would get for less than half, again, as much money as this addition and renovation. Thank you.
And you do bring a good point. Skip's initial concept of adding on to this building, it is saving you some money, but in the long term, a new building might have been a better choice. But you know what? It's the cards that are dealt, and I think the trustees and we're trying to do the best that we can with what we're hearing is what the will of the people is. So, yeah, I don't disagree with you on a personal level, but we're the damn, right?
Yes.
So, this is kind of how the process will go. We're hoping for approval. I know it's been a long battle to try to get the library approved. We, as I said, we've been very privileged to work with a number of communities to build libraries for them, and it's always the same challenges. People question whether libraries are passé, and I can tell you that every library that we've completed have been a huge success for the town. They're very, very well used. They become centers of gathering for many different age groups, and they do research. So, think positive. It's I think it's going to be something that's really well received by the town. So we're excited about trying to get you guys the dream that you have been working towards for so long. As far as right now, we're telling the trustees a construction budget of about 1.533. That includes the renovations that Anthony discussed in the front of the building. And the idea being that we want to give you a truly energy efficient building, which will reduce your heating costs, reduce your electrical costs. The LED lighting will make a huge difference in your electrical costs for really not that much of an expenditure. Just a nice facelift as far as flooring and new acoustical ceilings, so that it looks really sharp throughout the building. Your cost per square foot, and I just did a study, you're probably saving overall the whole building, maybe $40 a square foot. Libraries seem to be costing about $250 per square foot these days. I think your construction cost, if you factor in both old and new, is going to be in the $210. So this method or scheme that has been proposed is going to save some money, and I think that's hopefully going to help people support it. Other questions for construction? Yes, sir.
I like the plan. It's pretty impressive, and but you said something that just kind of caught my attention. I wonder if we really can't look at the future that clearly. We just don't have crystal balls. But there's a point in my mind that says that at some point the need for hard copy book storage might go down a little bit. And I'm wondering if you might want to make an option within your design to someday possibly have stacks in the meeting room and take the front area of the library and possibly use that for larger meeting rooms. And so if you were to put radiant heating, and that was the comment that you made in the meeting room, that would preclude that as being a possibility. So I would just like to offer that.
No,
I think that the main thrust I'm hearing throughout the town is that the trustees are promoting the library to be more of a meeting center. And it's just hard to say, 20 years from now, that might be a very strong need, and the need for actual physical storage of books might be much less. And, we hear noises about electronic storage and that sort of thing. So that's why I mentioned it to you.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that we've noticed and heard from other libraries that have been completed is, having some small spaces where people can gather, 3-4 people for a little meeting is a wonderful asset. It's a place where you can go and study or work on some project. So I think, spaces like that are very well received. And I think the design gives you some pretty good flexibility. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to say Gary has a great point. And for anybody here who doesn't know, inspired by a guy introducing himself, I'm Max Ledoux. And yeah, that's a great point because we don't know what libraries are going to be used for in 20 years. I mean, libraries as a, the Carnegies were building libraries literally 100 years ago, So in some ways, well, not in some ways, in almost all ways, we're a lot different than 100 years ago. And so, yeah, what kind of, different uses will the library have in the coming years?
Flexibility.
Yeah, flexibility, because, I mean, listen.
It's all open space
It's all open space.
that we're proposing. So there's nothing really static in this building as to how it could be reconfigured as years go on.
Well, he said something about putting radiant heating in the floor, and you can't put shelves where radiant heating is, and that's what caught my attention.
We've got stacks out in the children's room right on top of radiant heat.
All
The whole
right,
children's
well,
room
that's-
is stacks on top of radiant heat.
Yeah, you just don't anchor them.
Well, that's what I meant. You
But we're kind of looking at maybe a VAV system, for the heat, which is variable air volume. It gives you lots of control, so you can control different areas, different spaces in the library. If for instance, just the meeting room is going to be used in the evening, you can turn other spaces down and just leave that meeting room as being designated a hot area. So that's part of the whole design development is sitting down and saying, okay, what can we afford within this budget? And one of the things that we and the architects really, really agree on is the worst thing in the world is to give you a lousy mechanical system, because you'll remember us very poorly when you're cold or too hot. So we try to spend a lot of time doing that. And it's the same thing with, good lighting. And they like to put really fancy lighting in sometimes, and we'll say, hey, can't afford that one. But good LED lighting, you'll appreciate it because it makes significant impact on your electrical bills. So things like that, we think it's good to spend money on. Who's next?
And I just wanted to respond to your comment, Max. Libraries are changing. Libraries have changed. What we have now are totally different than just 30 years ago. They have become a community center for towns. They've become the living room, more or less, which is why the need for large rooms are required. We do not have lots of little rooms anymore. We more try to create environments that are open and flexible and convertible for the changes that we see down the road. But as Andre alluded to, our past successes with new libraries, the collections have increased, the attendance and use of the library have increased significantly, and more families are utilizing them. So having a new space that is more of a community living room is the trend, with computers, with technology, with PowerPoint set up so that so anybody can use the environment. So that's how it's changing, and we only see it going further that way. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Anthony just touched a bit on my question. Are we planning a media center within the library?
I believe so, Christy. Some place where they can take out videos and CDs and things like
Well,
that?
no,
what you mean?
I meant.
Well, we've
I
talked
meant
about a smart
computer
wall
center.
in the meeting
Computer
room,
center.
not just a TV, but a whole smart wall. We've talked about that. We definitely need space for makers. STEM
What?
materials, makerspace. People, if you don't know about makerspace,
No.
this is a big thing now. Yeah, and for new libraries, we mostly need space for people to come and work, people to come and build things, people to come, we've had a 3D printer here, which we can get on a regular basis, maybe even end up with one. As Anthony said, libraries are changing. We're doing our best to keep up.
Can I follow up? I'm sorry.
Sure.
When I said media center, I meant, are we gonna have an area where there are several computers and
Oh, yes.
and terminals and does that mean we have to purchase a lot more equipment?
No.
Okay, that was my question.
In a lot of cases, people just appreciate being able to plug their laptops.
Lots of
into
people
places
bring their
to work,
own now, which is why we need more space.
I just wanted to say, being involved in a number of organizations, we can't meet here. The space is too small. And I think it's the Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or, groups such as that don't have places to go in Tuftonboro. So to have a little more room is really going to be a plus, and to have the audiovisual equipment. I mean, even for me, the number of times I want to give a presentation, I think, well, I can do it at the hospital, or I can, do it at the Wolfboro Library, but to have it in my hometown is going to be really exciting.
Yep. You're right, that seems to be a very, very popular thing with libraries, is they have places together. Yes, sir?
You flashed a number of 210 square foot. How did you get there?
I looked at what it was going to cost for renovating existing spaces in the new space compared to what typical average libraries, which were coming in at 250, 255. So.
But at 1.9 for what we're doing, it's significantly higher than that, correct?
Well, I'm talking just construction costs. I only talk construction.
I'm just, if you're going to run around with 210 per square foot, I think it's immediately going to get calculated to be significantly more, because it is.
Yeah, I apologize. When I talk numbers, it's strictly from my world, which is construction. And that's what I understand, is because I'm working with another town right now, and I just calculated their library cost to be $330 a square foot. And they said, oh my God, why? And I had to do a long dissertation about...
Well, that's the total cost.
No, that was just construction
Just
costs.
construction,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, because you had a
So it wasn't
whole,
one of our
a whole
libraries.
list of your other costs that were involved, and construction was only a portion of it.
Right. If you look at, and they're very variable. For instance, construction...
Would you put that slide back up that shows your construction, your total 1.9 million, and how that was, it came up with construction, and then that'll show you the
You have a slide
various,
like
there's
that?
engineering
No.
costs, there's all kinds of.
Well, I know, but that just was just a number.
It's
Just a
an
number?
observation. If we're being asked to approve 1.9, and someone stands up and says the construction costs are 210, I don't think that's going to play well if it's really the total cost.
Right.
So if you're only going to talk construction costs, fine, as long as it's defined.
Right.
Then you're gonna toss in all the other stuff, which may or may not be your bag, but you're not gonna sell it at 210 if it's really.
No, I was just trying to give some comparisons on...
By the way, 210 sounds great. Let's go.
What we were saving, based on... If you look at, we got to build a new library across the street, in today's dollars, be 250 plus, as opposed to coming in here. And again, 250 is just for construction. As opposed to staying here and renovating it, gets you down to a savings of about $40 a square foot. That's the point I was trying to make.
And all I'm saying is, it's gonna draw more questions if either the.
Forget I said it.
questions-
Yeah.
Don't say it again.
It's pretty easy. If you take your total of 1,919,000 and you divide it by the total square footage of the old construction and the new construction, you'll get your square foot construction cost.
And that takes into consideration all the fees, the
There they
contingency,
are right
the
there.
furniture, and everything
Your
else that.
testing services,
Yeah.
your surveys, your goods, the list is right in front of you.
Yeah.
Well, it's a different,
It's a different
it's a
number.
different spin.
Yeah.
You know, you're including the old space with the new.
Right.
And I guess as long as you're ready to answer the question about, really, it's only 210? Okay.
That's why we, on this side of the table, try not to talk about square footages because it's so blurry. But it's so easy for people to just say, okay, that's a 10,000 square feet, it's $200 a square foot, that's math they can do. But it's not that easy in the whole realm of it all, so.
At this point, I think I'd like to ask Jack Whitmer to just discuss a little bit of dollars and numbers and how it might affect us.
I've gone out to 3 different banks. We did Meredith Village Savings Bank, Northway Bank, and TD Bank to get some rates. I asked for quotes on $1.1 million to borrow. The rest of the money would come from the town funds that are already there, plus the fundraising that the trustees have done. And I asked for 5, 7, and 10-year financing. It's a relatively small amount of money in the grand scheme of things. Northway Bank came back with rates of 2.3, 2.5, and 2.75%, based on the small amount of money in the short terms. Obviously, the 2.3% is for 5 years. The 2.75 is for the 10 years. The quotes from TD Bank were 3.25, 3.50, and 3.75, so a point higher. And Meredith Village was just a little bit higher than that. Northway Bank, as you might remember, we used to finance the fire department, the fire station. Great bank to work with. There's no prepayment penalty should there be a time where we wanted to pay a little bit more principal or whatever. There's no penalties involved. And the entire bank origination fee, closing costs and all, is $350. So Northway Bank certainly is would be my preferred choice, obviously, if we're going to go with one of the local banks. The other question that came up was, well, how about the bond bank? Because the bond bank is out there. The problem with dealing with the bond bank is there's a lot of upfront application fees, thousands of dollars for application fees. They only sell their bonds in July and December, and they can't tell you what the rate is today. They won't know that until they actually sell the bonds in July. And that money is not available until July. The other thing is with the bond bank, you have to take all that money at once. So when you sign the paperwork, they send you a check for the $1.1 million, and you start paying interest on that day. With Northway Bank, we can draw this money down until it's gone, and then start the amortization from there. So Northway Bank, or any one of the local banks, is a better option. The Northway Bank certainly seems to be the better option. In looking at between 5 and 10 years, you're looking at adding, I've done some rough calculations of 2.5 to 4 cents to the tax rate. So that's what this project is going to wind up costing. Obviously a little less up front if we go 10 years, but 5 years obviously is a pretty short term, and we can get this thing paid off fairly quickly that way. So.
Yeah. Whose decision is it which option to use?
It's up to the selectmen to decide not only what bank to go with and also the terms of the loan. So, but they won't make that decision until it's actually approved at town meeting. But once it's approved, then they can go back. My recommendation would be for the selectmen probably within the next 3 weeks maybe to lock in a rate. The 2.3 was quoted last month. I don't think, I wouldn't expect it to change a whole lot. but they couldn't give me a lock rate until it's actually approved at town meeting. But they can lock it in a week or two before town meeting, and then if it's approved, that's the rate that's locked in going forward.
And Jack, with the bond, there's no early payoff possible.
Right, with the bond, if you go to the bond bank, once you get that money, if you take it for 10 years, you have to pay it off in 10 years. There's no option for you to pay it off early, which I think is something that we did that with when we bought the Gould property. We also financed that through Northway Bank, and town finances allowed the selectmen to pay that off a year early, so we saved some interest money there. So having the option to be able to pay it off or pay down a little more interest if you want any given year, you can certainly do that.
Jack, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. You say it was for the Northway Bank at for 10 years, it's $250,000 a year?
Yes.
So my taxes, for a house, it'd be $5 for a house that would be assessed at $200,000.
Right, $5.
A year.
Correct.
$5 a year?
Right.
If your house is valued at $250,000,
Yeah, $200,000
so if your
house
house
is
is
gonna cost you
valued at
about
less
$5
or more,
a year.
you can just figure it that way.
At 2.5 cents
Per thousand?
So, I mean, it's a bargain, it really is, and this is the right time to do it. Construction costs are only gonna go up. And I think it's a right time to do it.
Jack, you mentioned, well, I'm kind of concerned that, I think interest rates are going to be pretty volatile in the next 60-day period. Is there any way that we could take some steps without violating, town rules to lock ourselves in with the bank? You mentioned something to the effect that the closing costs were very minimal.
Yeah, the closing costs, yeah.
I mean, could we do an application that is for the $350 and just get ourselves locked in?
Northway Bank will allow us to call, town meeting is the 14th of March. So after next Wednesday, which is the 14th, or Tuesday, whatever day it is.
Wednesday.
Jack.
Wednesday. Don't forget
Don't
Jack.
forget Jack, it's Valentine's Day.
So really, within a 30-day window, they'll lock us in with a 30-day guarantee.
Yeah, okay.
So you're right. I think after sometime at the end of next week, if the selectmen wanted to pick Northway Bank and pick a time frame, not. Again, they can't do anything legal
Exactly.
until it's passed at town meeting,
Right.
but they can certainly send the application in.
Yeah.
If it's not approved at town meeting, then the application goes away and nothing
Sure.
happens.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
But you're absolutely right. I think if the sooner we can lock it in, the better off we are.
Yeah.
Right.
Jack, you're in touch with what's going on in schools and other things as well.
Yeah.
There's this big gorilla sitting behind me in this closet in the form of a House bill to reinstate a form of donor towns. Should that go through, do you have any idea what the impact would be on Tufton Borough?
Well, if you're talking about the one that, there's a couple of them, and I think the one bill that was just killed in committee was to change the funding formula for all cooperative school districts.
Mm-hmm.
That would have raised our school portion by a little over $3.3 million.
But that was killed.
And our cost per student would have gone up to about $35,000 per student. That was killed in committee 19-0.
All right.
So that was a good
There's another one though.
But I will say that particular bill was co-sponsored unfortunately by Glenn Cordelli, who's our rep.
We have spoken to him.
I have to say that he did initially, and he read the text and he withdrew his support and he voted against it.
Yeah, and he couldn't.
He's on the committee. He voted against it.
All right. Well, my feeling about that is, and not to get into an argument about it, but my feeling is you don't put your name on a bill unless you know what you're putting your name on for.
Well, that's certainly but the fact is that he voted against it.
But there are a whole bunch of other bills out there. The state continues to take money from the school districts for the state's benefit. That's a battle that we have at the school district all the time. The state used to pay 35% of the retirement cost. Now the state pays 0. Everyone here in this room is paying for that. The state's taking money away. They're also taking 4% of our stabilization money every year for the next 10 years or 15 years. Again, I think last year there was only $170,000 in the grand scheme of things, not a lot, but everyone in this room is paying a piece of that.
Right.
And there's additional money for the bill that's out there for school choice. Whether you're for or against school choice, that's money that would come out of our school district, paying for people who go to private schools and all that. That's your, it's still out there, it hasn't been voted on yet.
Well, I'm always concerned about the amount of money, separate that we have to pay that isn't totally under the selectmen's or the voters' control per se. That big one was really concerning to me.
It really was.
Yeah, but Guy, there is another bill that you just mentioned. It's the stabilization.
Yep, stabilization
Yeah.
grant. And the state gives stabilization grant to offset the demographics in different communities and all that. And the state now is taking 4% of that away from all school districts over the next 20 years or whatever it is. So the state continues to take more and more money away. So, but I think getting away from the school district business, this is a bargain, I think, for interest rates. I think we got to do it now, get this done, and at a 2.3 or 2.75% interest rate. I don't think we can go wrong.
Couldn't argue with that interest rate, that's for sure.
And plus the fees. The other banks that I talked to, now, granted, all these closing costs are not that expensive, but $350 for Northway Bank. Meredith Village, they said, was probably $750, $800. TD Bank is about the same. So Northway Bank is certainly a friend of the municipalities that they did move at this point.
Interesting.
Well, very interesting meeting. A lot of good points being made by everybody all concerned. The trustees will deal with addressing some of the questions that came up this morning. We'll start on that first of the week, and I'd like to also take the time to thank folks from SMP and Mount for taking time out of their Saturday mornings to come down and give us an education. We're going to have 2 more of these as we get closer to town meeting. They will be run by the trustees, so the information will be hopefully the same. Obviously, not presented nearly as well because this is what they do far better than what we do, but we will have an opportunity for other people to come and hear about it. And with that, thank you very much for coming.